An arrogant millionaire decides to impress his new girlfriend with a luxurious dinner, but upon seeing his ex-wife working as a waitress, he turns the evening into a cruel spectacle of provocations and humiliation. Little did he know, the night would take a turn he could never have anticipated. Le Petit Jardin glowed under the soft light of the New York City sunset, its French windows filtering the golden brilliance of the setting sun through champagne silk curtains. At the entrance of Manhattan's most exclusive restaurant, the valet adjusted his white gloves as a black Bentley Continental GT glided silently along the circular driveway paved with stones imported from Tuscany. Mackenzie Reynolds, 45, emerged from the vehicle with the confidence of someone accustomed to having the world at his feet. His bespoke Tom Ford suit accentuated his commanding figure, while his Patek Philippe gleamed subtly on his wrist, a quiet declaration of power and status. With a fluid motion, he circled the car to open the passenger door. "Welcome to New York's finest restaurant, darling," he announced with a calculated smile, extending his hand to Audrey Lancaster, 28, a stunning vision in her red Valentino dress. Audrey stepped out of the car with the studied grace of a former model, her Louboutin heels clicking softly against the pavement. "Mackenzie, you always know how to impress," she purred, adjusting a strand of her perfectly styled blonde hair. The maitre d', recognizing Mackenzie immediately, hurried to greet him. "Mr. Reynolds, it's an honor to have you with us again. Your preferred table is ready, of course." The interior of Le Petit Jardin was a symphony of refined elegance. Crystal baccarat chandeliers cast a soft glow over walls draped in French silk, while elaborate arrangements of white orchids adorned every strategically placed surface. The gentle sound of a Steinway grand piano floated through the air, blending seamlessly with the delicate clinking of crystal glasses and polite conversation. "You should see the looks on people's faces when we walk in," Audrey whispered, leaning toward Mackenzie as they followed the maitre d'. "It's like the king and queen just arrived." Mackenzie smiled with satisfaction. "Darling, in this world, power and prestige are everything. And we set the standard." Their table, strategically placed near one of the panoramic windows overlooking the restaurant's inner garden, offered both privacy and visibility, perfect for seeing and being seen. A sommelier approached immediately, presenting a wine list bound in Italian leather. "The Chateau Lafite Rothschild 1982, please," Mackenzie ordered, without even opening the menu. "And bring Riedel sommelier glasses. The regular ones don't do justice to a wine of this caliber." As they waited for the wine, Mackenzie observed Audrey with satisfaction. She was his latest conquest, a flawless addition to his collection of personal trophies. Her beauty was undeniable, but it was her innate understanding of the social game that truly captivated him. Audrey knew exactly how to carry herself, how to smile at the right moment, how to make every head turn when she entered a room. "So, darling," Audrey began, her green eyes gleaming with a mix of ambition and admiration, "tell me more about that acquisition you mentioned earlier. It must have been thrilling to crush the competition." Mackenzie's smile widened. "Ah, yes, Thompson and Associates. They never saw it coming. 15 years of business obliterated in 3 months of strategic maneuvers. Old Thompson had to sell his house in the Hamptons. It was at this moment that the universe decided to play its hand." A familiar figure approached the table, clad in the impeccable uniform of Le Petit Jardin. Samantha Mitchell, 35, stopped before them with a professional posture that masked the storm of emotions within. Time seemed to freeze. Mackenzie, who moments earlier had been gesturing animatedly as he described his latest corporate conquest, was momentarily at a loss for words. His eyes met Samantha's, and for a fleeting moment, the veneer of sophistication and control cracked. "Good evening, I'm Samantha, and I'll be your waitress tonight," she announced with surprising calm, though her heart pounded furiously against her ribs. Audrey, noticing Mackenzie's sudden change in demeanor, glanced between the two with growing curiosity. "Do you know each other?" she asked, her melodic voice tinged with suspicion. "Samantha is my ex-wife," Mackenzie replied, regaining his composure with a cold smile. "How interesting to find you here, Sam. Waiting tables. How the mighty have fallen." The comment hit like an arrow, but Samantha maintained her dignity. "May I present tonight's specials?" "Oh, this is simply delicious," Audrey laughed, her eyes sparkling with malice. "Mackenzie, you didn't tell me your ex had such diverse talents." The tension in the air was palpable. Other patrons began casting discreet glances in their direction, sensing the electricity in the room. Samantha held her professional demeanor, though her fingers tightened imperceptibly around her small order pad. "We have a lobster risotto with black truffle that is particularly exceptional tonight," Samantha continued, her voice steady and controlled. "Ah, yes," Mackenzie interjected, his tone now dripping with mockery. "You always had a peculiar taste for expensive things, didn't you, Sam? Though now it seems you're on the other side of the counter." The comment elicited a musical laugh from Audrey, who leaned forward, her diamonds glittering under the chandeliers. "Darling, don't be cruel. I'm sure she's doing the best she can." Samantha took a deep breath, her eyes briefly meeting Mackenzie's. "Shall I give you a moment to decide?" "Please do," Audrey replied with faux sweetness. "And when you return, dear, make sure to bring an extra napkin. You never know when we might need to clean something up." As Samantha walked away with the grace of a ballerina, her dignity intact, she could feel the stares piercing her back. In the kitchen, she briefly leaned against a wall, closing her eyes for a moment. "Are you okay?" asked Sergio, a young waiter who had noticed her tense expression. "Perfectly fine," Samantha replied, straightening up and adjusting her uniform. She had weathered worse storms and survived. This would just be another night at Le Petit Jardin, even if her heart silently bled beneath her professional smile. In the bustling kitchen of Le Petit Jardin, Sergio Martinez watched Samantha with growing concern. In his 3 years as a waiter at the establishment, he had never seen his colleague so shaken. At 24, Sergio was the prodigy of the team, the son of Mexican immigrants who had earned his place through relentless dedication and a natural talent for refined service. "Sam, let me take that table," he offered, his soft accent laced with genuine concern. "You don't have to go through this." Samantha adjusted the small gold pin on her uniform, a delicate butterfly symbolizing her 5 years of service at the restaurant. "No, Sergio. Some battles we have to fight on our own." Logan Bennett, the restaurant manager, approached quietly. Tall and elegant in his Italian suit, Logan was known for handling crises with the precision of a surgeon and the diplomacy of an ambassador. At 40, he carried the experience of someone who had seen it all in the world of fine dining. "Samantha," his voice was low and controlled, "Mr. Reynolds is a VIP client, but if he's making you uncomfortable—" "Everything is under control, Logan," Samantha interrupted softly. "I can handle it." In the main dining room, Mackenzie was savoring every moment of his little spectacle of cruelty. Pouring himself another glass of Chateau Lafite, he began unearthing the past for his new companion. "You know, Audrey, Samantha always had this obsession with status, but she never really understood how the game worked," he remarked, loud enough for nearby tables to overhear. "She thought that just being pretty and having good manners was enough." Audrey leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with malice. "Oh, darling, do tell me more. How did you two meet?" "Harvard Business School," Mackenzie replied, swirling the wine in his glass. "She was a secretary in the administration department. Ambitious, of course, always flirting with the professors, trying to get a chance to sit in on classes. The memory, however, was quite different. 12 years earlier, Samantha had been a brilliant scholarship student, earning her spot through extraordinary merit. Mackenzie, at the time an arrogant young heir, had been captivated not just by her beauty, but by her sharp intelligence and unyielding determination. In the kitchen, Sergio meticulously prepared the tray with the ordered dishes. His own story of perseverance made him particularly sensitive to the situation. Coming from a humble neighborhood in the Bronx, he had worked 3 different jobs to pay for his hospitality course and saw in Samantha the same drive that had propelled him forward. "Do you know her story?" he asked Logan, who was overseeing the presentation of the dishes. Logan sighed, his blue eyes clouded with concern. "More than I'd like. Samantha and Mackenzie Reynolds. It's a story Manhattan hasn't completely forgotten." The manager recalled the scandal that had rocked New York high society 5 years earlier. Mackenzie, then a rising businessman, had orchestrated a brutal separation, using his connections to destroy not just the marriage, but Samantha's professional reputation as well. "She was one of the most respected analysts in the financial market," Logan continued, his voice low, "until Mackenzie spread rumors about insider trading. Nothing was ever proven, of course, but in our world, suspicion is as deadly as guilt." Samantha returned to the table with the main courses. a perfectly cooked filet mignon for Mackenzie and lobster thermidor for Audrey. Her presentation was flawless, every movement a rehearsed dance of professionalism. "Your filet, sir," she announced in a neutral tone, "and the lobster for the lady." "Oh, Sam," Mackenzie smiled, his tone falsely cordial. "Do you remember those dinners we used to have at Perse? You loved lobster. When you could afford it, of course." Audrey laughed as she delicately cut into her lobster. "Darling, don't be mean. I'm sure she can still dream of those moments." The provocation was calculated to wound, but Samantha maintained her composure. Years of experience in the corporate world had taught her to use silence as a shield. In the kitchen, Sergio watched the scene through the swinging doors, his hands nervously clutching a dish towel. His own past experiences with discrimination and prejudice made him hypersensitive to abuse of power. "No es justo," he muttered to himself, unconsciously slipping into his native Spanish when emotional. "Someone needs to do something." Logan placed a calming hand on the young waiter's shoulder. "Sometimes, Sergio, the greatest revenge is success. Watch and learn." The dinner unfolded like an elaborate play, each act carefully choreographed to maximize discomfort. Mackenzie and Audrey alternated between completely ignoring Samantha and making malicious comments about her current position. "You know, darling," Mackenzie remarked as Samantha poured more wine, "I've always said humility is a virtue. Isn't it wonderful to see how some people finally find their place?" The bottle in her hands trembled slightly, but Samantha didn't spill a single drop. Her eyes met Mackenzie's for a brief moment, and in them, he saw something that unsettled him. Not defeat, but a calm resolve he couldn't quite understand. In the service area, other staff members were beginning to notice the growing tension. Maria, a seasoned sommelier, approached Logan with concern. "That man, he's deliberately trying to provoke her," she whispered, her 20 years of experience in the industry allowing her to read the situation with clarity. Logan nodded gravely. "Keep an eye on things, Maria, and make sure the other servers are alert. We don't want incidents." As the night wore on, the provocations became increasingly bold. Audrey, emboldened by both the wine and her sense of power, began making increasingly elaborate and unnecessary requests. "Oh, Sam, may I call you Sam?" Her syrupy voice dripped venom. "This napkin has a crease. Could you bring another? And perhaps ensure this time it's been properly pressed?" Sergio, watching from his station, felt his blood boil. "Logan," he called the manager in an urgent whisper, "this is harassment. We need to do something." But before Logan could respond, a new figure emerged discreetly from the office at the back of the restaurant. Hayden Mitchell, the owner of Le Petit Jardin, had arrived for his routine evening inspection. Tall, distinguished, and with a commanding presence, Hayden absorbed the scene before him with keen eyes. His relationship with Samantha was one of the restaurant's best-kept secrets, known only to Logan and a few senior staff members. "Hold your position, Sergio," Logan instructed, noticing the owner's arrival. "Sometimes the universe has its own way of balancing things." In the dining room, Mackenzie raised his glass in an ironic toast. "To life, my dear Audrey, and to the surprising twists it throws our way." Little did he know the night's biggest twist was yet to come. The atmosphere at Le Petit Jardin grew heavier with the mounting tension. At a nearby table, an elderly couple exchanged disapproving glances at Mackenzie and Audrey's behavior. The woman, in particular, shifted uncomfortably in her chair every time another jab was directed at the waitress. In the bustling kitchen, Chef Antoine, a robust Frenchman with decades of experience in Michelin-starred restaurants, noticed the change in his domain's atmosphere. His sous-chefs worked in tense silence, occasionally casting worried looks toward the swinging doors. "Qu'est-ce qui se passe?" he murmured to himself, observing the uncharacteristic behavior of his usually lively team. Logan approached the chef, explaining the situation in a low voice. The Frenchman's face reddened with indignation. "Sacre bleu, in my 30 years in the kitchen, never—" "Chef," Logan interrupted gently. "Samantha asked to handle it herself." Meanwhile, Sergio continued his duties but stayed strategically close to Mackenzie's table. His own experience with difficult customers had taught him the importance of being present without being intrusive. Born in the Bronx to a cleaning lady and a mechanic, Sergio had learned early on how to navigate hostile environments with grace and dignity. "Como lo hace," he murmured to Maria, admiring Samantha's unshakable composure. "How does she stay so calm?" Maria, meticulously arranging crystal glasses at her station, replied with the wisdom of her years of experience. Algunas personas llevan su dignidad como una armadura, mi amor. Some people carry their dignity like armor. As the night wore on, memories of the past seemed to float through the air like restless ghosts. Mackenzie, increasingly drunk on both wine and his own sense of superiority, began recounting stories from the past, twisting them with calculated cruelty. "You know, Audrey," he spoke loud enough for Samantha to hear from the nearby service station, "there was a time when our dear Sam here thought she could become a partner in the company. Can you imagine? A Harvard scholarship kid with big dreams." Audrey leaned forward, her eyes sparkling with renewed malice. "Oh, darling, do tell me more. It must have been amusing when she realized her place." The truth, however, was far removed from the narrative Mackenzie spun. Samantha had not only graduated top of her class at Harvard, but had also been responsible for some of the most lucrative deals in Mackenzie's company during her tenure. Her talent for financial analysis and corporate strategy was recognized across Wall Street, until the day Mackenzie decided she had become a threat. Logan, watching the scene unfold, recalled the day Samantha had walked into Le Petit Jardin 5 years ago looking for a job. Despite being professionally devastated, there was a dignity in her bearing that had immediately impressed him. "You're overqualified for this position," he had told her at the time. "Sometimes," she had replied with a serene smile, "we have to rebuild our lives brick by brick." Now seeing her face her demons with such grace, Logan fully understood why Hayden had fallen in love with her. It was impossible not to admire someone who maintained their integrity, even in the face of relentless provocation. At the table, Mackenzie continued his private performance of cruelty. "Audrey, darling, you should have seen her face when she found out all her Wall Street contacts had disappeared. It's amazing how people can be so selective with their friendships when necessary." The manipulation Mackenzie had orchestrated at the time was meticulous. Using his influence and connections, he had spread rumors of insider trading, destroying not only Samantha's professional reputation, but also her chances of securing another job in the financial sector. Sergio, who had approached to clear some plates, felt his heart tighten at the remarks. For in his dark eyes, reflections of his own struggle against prejudice and discrimination glimmered with renewed intensity. "More wine, sir?" he asked with forced politeness, noticing Mackenzie's nearly empty glass. "Ah, yes," Mackenzie replied with disdain. "And make sure it's served at the correct temperature this time. I'm sure even someone with your background can understand the importance of that, can't you?" The xenophobic remark hit Sergio like a slap, but before he could react, he felt Logan's firm hand on his shoulder. The manager had silently materialized behind him, anticipating the moment of tension. "Allow me to personally check the wine's temperature, sir," Logan intervened smoothly, guiding Sergio away from the table. In the kitchen, Chef Antoine prepared the next service with even greater intensity than usual, channeling his indignation into his dishes. "La cuisine," he murmured to his team, "c'est notre façon de combattre l'injustice." The kitchen is our way of fighting injustice. As the evening progressed, Mackenzie and Audrey's behavior became increasingly brazen. The alcohol had stripped away their last layers of discretion, and their provocations were now open and shameless. "Oh, Sam, may I call you Sam?" Audrey's syrupy voice dripped venom. "This napkin has a crease. Could you bring another? And perhaps make sure it's been properly pressed this time." Sergio, watching from his station, felt his blood boil. "Logan," he called to the manager in an urgent whisper, "this is harassment. We have to do something." But before Logan could respond, a new figure quietly emerged from the office at the back of the restaurant. Hayden Mitchell, the owner of Le Petit Jardin, had arrived for his routine evening inspection. Tall, distinguished, and commanding immediate respect, Hayden took in the scene before him with sharp, discerning eyes. His relationship with Samantha was one of the restaurant's best-kept secrets, known only to Logan and a few senior staff members. "Hold your ground, Sergio," Logan instructed, noting the owner's arrival. "Sometimes the universe has its own way of setting things right." In the dining room, Mackenzie raised his glass in an ironic toast. "To life, my dear Audrey, and to the surprising twists it throws our way." Little did he know, the biggest twist of the night was just about to unfold. Hayden Mitchell walked through the main dining room of Le Petit Jardin with measured, deliberate steps. His blue-gray eyes, usually warm when interacting with staff and regular patrons, had taken on a glacial gleam as he observed the scene unfolding. At 45, he had built his reputation not just as one of New York's most respected restaurateurs, but also as a man of unshakable principles. The restaurant's murmur quieted subtly as he approached Mackenzie and Audrey's table. His presence commanded natural respect. His bespoke brioni suit, the grey streaks at his temples, and his impeccable posture were mere outward signs of an authority honed by decades of experience in fine dining. "Good evening." His deep, controlled voice immediately drew the couple's attention. "I'm Hayden Mitchell, owner of Le Petit Jardin. I trust you're enjoying your experience with us tonight." Mackenzie, still savoring his supposed superiority, smiled condescendingly. "Ah, the owner himself. I must say your establishment is adequate. Though," he cast a disdainful glance toward Samantha, who was watching from her service station, "some staffing choices are questionable." Audrey let out an affected giggle, adjusting her diamond necklace. "Oh, darling, I'm sure Mr. Mitchell appreciates constructive feedback from clients of your caliber." Hayden maintained his professional smile, but his eyes hardened imperceptibly. "In fact, Mr. Reynolds, I'm particularly interested in discussing your observations about our staff, especially regarding your comments about my wife." The silence that followed was deafening. Mackenzie, about to raise his wineglass to his lips, froze mid-motion. Audrey let out a small gasp, her perfectly made-up face visibly paling. "Your wife?" Mackenzie managed to stammer, his eyes darting between Hayden and Samantha, who was now approaching the table with surprising calm. "Yes," Hayden confirmed, reaching out to intertwine his fingers with Samantha's as she stood beside him. "Samantha is not only my wife, but also the co-owner of Le Petit Jardin. She has been for the past 3 years." The revelation landed like a bomb in the already electrically charged atmosphere. At nearby tables, a few regular patrons who knew the backstory smiled discreetly, while others watched the unfolding drama with barely concealed interest. That's impossible," Audrey blurted, her usual composure completely shattered. "She's a waitress." "Actually," Samantha spoke for the first time, her voice clear and steady, "I've learned every aspect of this business from the ground up. I firmly believe you can't lead without truly understanding every role and every challenge." Logan, watching the scene from a discreet distance, couldn't suppress a small smile of satisfaction. He vividly remembered the day Samantha, already married to Hayden, had insisted on starting her journey at the restaurant as a waitress, learning every detail of its operations. Mackenzie's face cycled through a rapid succession of emotions: shock, disbelief, anger, and finally, bitter realization of the situation he was in. His display of superiority had turned into a spectacle of ignorance. "You planned this," he accused, his voice trembling with restrained rage. "This whole charade." "No, Mackenzie," Hayden responded with a calmness that starkly contrasted with the other man's agitation. "You chose this restaurant. You chose to humiliate someone you believed to be beneath you. Your actions tonight were entirely your own." In the kitchen, Sergio and the staff had stopped their activities, watching the scene through the swinging doors. The young waiter felt tears of emotion welling up as he saw his mentor finally reveal her true position. "Es como una telenovela pero mejor," he whispered to Maria, who nodded silently, equally moved. Audrey, recovering partially from the initial shock, began hurriedly gathering her belongings. "Mackenzie, darling, I think we should go." But Hayden raised a hand in an elegant gesture of pause. "Please stay, your dinner isn't finished, and it would be a shame to waste the experience our team has worked so hard to create. Besides," his smile gained a sharp edge, "I'm sure we have much to discuss about business ethics and karma." The comment hit Mackenzie like a punch to the gut. He knew exactly what Hayden was referring to: the rumors he had spread about Samantha, the manipulations, the calculated lies that had destroyed her Wall Street career. "You can't," he began, but his voice faltered under Hayden's piercing gaze. "Can't what, Mr. Reynolds?" "Share with the financial community how you orchestrated the destruction of a highly competent analyst's reputation through baseless rumors. Or perhaps discuss the questionable practices your company has employed in recent years." The blood drained from Mackenzie's face. Hayden Mitchell wasn't just a successful restaurateur, he was also one of Manhattan's most influential investors, with connections that rivaled or exceeded Mackenzie's own. Samantha, who had remained silent during the confrontation, finally spoke. You know, Mackenzie, I've learned something important over the past few years. True success isn't about destroying others. It's about building something meaningful, something that makes a difference in people's lives. Her voice carried no bitterness or desire for revenge, only a serenity born of genuine growth. She looked around the restaurant, at the staff who had become her family, at the patrons who now knew and respected her not for her title, but for her character. This place, she continued, isn't just a restaurant. It's a home for extraordinary people who work tirelessly to create special moments for others. People like Sergio, who worked 3 jobs to achieve his dream. Like Maria, who raised 3 children on her own while becoming one of the best sommeliers in the city. Like Chef Antoine, who turns every dish into a work of art. Samantha's words resonated throughout the dining room. Audrey, who moments earlier had worn an air of superiority, now fidgeted nervously with her Hermès bag, her perfectly manicured nails drumming against the Italian leather. "Mackenzie," she whispered urgently, "let's leave. This is humiliating." But Mackenzie remained frozen in his chair, his carefully constructed world crumbling before his eyes. The realization that Samantha had not only survived his attempts to ruin her, but had thrived in ways he never imagined, hit him in successive, crushing waves. Hayden, maintaining his impeccable posture, made a discreet gesture to Logan, who immediately understood. The manager approached with the bill, presenting it with professional flair. "Your dinner this evening, Mr. Reynolds," Logan announced with studied formality, including the Chateau Lafite Rothschild 1982. Mackenzie looked at the bill, his eyes widening slightly at the figure. On any other night, such an amount would have been insignificant to him, but now every zero seemed to mock his earlier arrogance. "Allow me," Hayden interjected smoothly, "to add a special courtesy to your bill." With a fluid motion, he wrote something on the back of the receipt. "My personal card, along with the contacts of some mutual friends on Wall Street. I'm sure they'd be interested in learning the truth about certain events from 5 years ago." Mackenzie's face, already pale, turned nearly cadaverous. "You wouldn't I?" Hayden raised an elegantly arched eyebrow. "Consider it a reminder, Mr. Reynolds. Every action has its consequences, and the universe has a fascinating way of balancing things." At nearby tables, Le Petit Jardin's regular patrons watched the scene unfold with a mix of fascination and approval. Many of them had known Samantha for years, admired her dedication and professionalism, and had no idea of her true position at the restaurant. Sergio, still observing from the kitchen's entrance, felt his heart swell with pride. To him, Samantha had always been more than a boss. She was an inspiration, living proof that dignity and perseverance always triumph over pettiness and cruelty. "Come, darling," Audrey insisted, tugging at Mackenzie's arm, her veneer of sophistication completely shattered. "We've made enough of a scene for one night." Mackenzie stood mechanically, his legs feeling strangely unsteady. All his earlier swagger and dominant demeanor had dissolved, leaving only the hollow shell of a man who had just realized how fragile his power truly was. "One last thing," Samantha said, her voice carrying a quiet authority she had never revealed before. "That acquisition of Thompson and Associates you mentioned earlier, I reversed it last week. Old Thompson will have his Hampton house back by the end of the month." The final blow was devastating. Mackenzie visibly staggered, gripping the table for support. His crowning corporate achievement, the one he had been boasting about moments earlier, had been undone without his knowledge. "How?" he stammered. "Let's just say," Hayden replied with an enigmatic smile, "Wall Street still recognizes genuine talent when it sees it, and my wife has always been exceptionally talented at identifying irregularities in corporate transactions." The couple left the restaurant in stunned silence, Audrey practically dragging Mackenzie toward the exit. The sound of her heels clicking against the marble floor echoed like a metronome, marking the end of an era. As the doors closed behind them, a subtle transformation occurred in Le Petit Jardin. The tension that had hung in the air all night gradually dissipated, replaced by an atmosphere of quiet celebration. Chef Antoine emerged from the kitchen, his cheeks flushed with emotion. "Madame Samantha," he declared in his thick French accent, "Ce soir, nous célébrons. Tonight, we celebrate." The staff gathered around Samantha, their faces glowing with admiration and joy. Logan raised a glass of sparkling water in a spontaneous toast. "To resilience," he said with a warm smile. his voice carrying a note of genuine pride. "And to Samantha, our leader, our inspiration, and the heart of Le Petit Jardin." The room erupted into soft applause, the noise blending harmoniously with the gentle music that resumed from the piano. Samantha, her eyes glistening with unshed tears, raised her own glass in gratitude, glancing around at the faces that had become her family. "This isn't just a victory for me," she said softly, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "It's a reminder that we all have the strength to rise, no matter how far we're pushed down. Thank you, all of you, for being part of this journey." The celebration continued in the quiet elegance that defined Le Petit Jardin. Dishes were served with renewed vigor, and laughter floated softly through the air. Samantha stood beside Hayden, their hands intertwined, a united front against the challenges they had overcome. In that moment, Le Petit Jardin wasn't just a restaurant. It was a testament to the power of resilience, dignity, and the triumph of integrity over arrogance. The day after the confrontation, Le Petit Jardin opened its doors as usual, but there was a different energy in the air. The story of Samantha and Mackenzie's clash had already spread through Manhattan's social circles, quickly becoming an urban legend of redemption and poetic justice. Samantha arrived early, as she always did. The restaurant, still empty, had an almost meditative atmosphere in the morning hours. She walked through the main dining room, her fingers gliding softly over the freshly pressed linen tablecloths, breathing in the subtle aroma of fresh flowers and polished wood. "Good morning, my dear." Hayden emerged from his office, 2 cups of Italian coffee in hand. It was their morning ritual, a few moments of calm before the day's frenzy began. "About last night," Samantha began, accepting the cup with a grateful smile. "You were magnificent," Hayden interrupted gently, "but I have a feeling this is just the beginning of a new chapter." He was right. The revelation of Samantha's true identity as co-owner of Le Petit Jardin and her story of resilience had sparked considerable interest. By early morning, 3 different gastronomy magazines had already reached out, requesting interviews. The Wall Street Journal called, Logan reported, consulting his notes. "They're interested in doing a piece on, the revolutionary management approach at Le Petit Jardin, how a former Wall Street analyst is redefining fine dining." Samantha chuckled softly. "Revolutionary? I'm just treating people with the respect they deserve." But her approach was indeed unique. By experiencing every role in the restaurant, from waitress to sommelier, she had developed a profound understanding of the complexities and challenges of each position. This translated into innovative management policies and an exceptionally harmonious work environment. Sergio arrived for his shift to find Samantha in the kitchen, helping Chef Antoine evaluate new products from local suppliers. The young waiter was still in awe of the previous night's events. "Senora Samantha," he began hesitantly, "I always knew you were special, but I never imagined—" "Sergio," she interrupted gently, "nothing has changed. I'm still the same person who taught you how to fold napkins and pour wine from the right. But in some ways, things had changed. The revelation of her true position brought new challenges and responsibilities. Reporters began to show up, eager to hear her story. Investors expressed interest in expanding Le Petit Jardin's concept to other cities. Paris, London, Tokyo. Hayden listed the possibilities during a strategic meeting. "The world is curious about our business model." Samantha listened attentively, but her mind was elsewhere. She thought of Maria, who had recently started studying to become a certified sommelier. Inspired by Samantha's example, she thought of Sergio, whose natural talent for service deserved nurturing and development. "Before we think about expansion," she finally said, "I want to implement a professional development program here. Scholarships for the staff, certifications, exchanges with other restaurants." Hayden smiled, recognizing in her determined gaze the same resolve that had captivated him years ago. "Always thinking of others first." "It's not altruism," she replied with a sly smile. "It's investment. The true strength of a business lies in the people who make it work." In the weeks that followed, Samantha faced a new kind of challenge, balancing her newly revealed position with the authenticity that had always defined her. Some customers, upon discovering that the simple waitress was actually the co-owner, tried to treat her differently. "Mrs. Mitchell," a regular customer exclaimed, visibly flustered upon seeing her serve water, "you don't need to—" "Please, call me Samantha," she responded kindly. "And yes, I do, it's part of who I am." The media also presented its own challenges. Journalists wanted to frame her story as a tale of vengeance against Mackenzie, but Samantha consistently redirected the focus to what truly mattered: building a workplace rooted in mutual respect and professional growth. In a particularly memorable interview with Food and Wine, she stated, "Success isn't about defeating your enemies. It's about staying true to your values and creating opportunities for others to grow." Her words resonated widely, cementing her reputation as not only a leader in fine dining, but also a symbol of resilience and grace. And as the days unfolded, Samantha's journey became a beacon of inspiration, not just for her team, but for everyone who crossed paths with Le Petit Jardin. The impact of Samantha's philosophy began to extend beyond the walls of Le Petit Jardin. Other restaurants in the city started questioning their own management practices. The idea that a fine dining establishment could be both exclusive and genuinely welcoming was revolutionizing New York's culinary scene. One afternoon, while overseeing a new staff training session, Samantha received an unexpected call. It was Thompson, the businessman she had helped reclaim his company. "Mrs. Mitchell," his voice trembled with emotion, "I don't know how to thank you. What you did, it wasn't just about business, it was about dignity." That conversation set off a chain of events no one could have foreseen. Deeply moved by Samantha's intervention, Thompson proposed a partnership to create an investment fund focused on helping small business owners who had been unfairly harmed by predatory practices from larger corporations. "Imagine," he suggested during a lunch meeting at Le Petit Jardin, "how many others we could help. How many other Samanthas are out there just needing a second chance?" The idea struck a deep chord with her. In her sleepless nights, when the ghosts of the past occasionally visited, Samantha often thought about others who had been victims of ruthless corporate games. "I can't abandon the restaurant," she replied thoughtfully. "This place, these people are my family now." "Who said anything about abandoning it?" Thompson smiled. "Le Petit Jardin can be our model, our living proof that ethical business practices can still be extraordinarily successful." The proposal introduced new challenges. Balancing the management of the restaurant with a social investment project would require significant restructuring, but Samantha had learned that obstacles often disguised opportunities for growth. In a meeting with her team, she shared her plans, proposing a more participative management structure. Logan would be promoted to general manager with expanded authority. Sergio, with his natural talent for training, would take on the role of coordinating the professional development program. "You're not just employees," she declared, looking at each familiar face around the table. "You're partners in this journey. Each of you has the potential to lead, to make a difference in the lives of others." Maria, who had recently completed her sommelier certification, was the first to speak. "You've taught us that dignity isn't something anyone can take from us. It's something that grows stronger when shared with others." Chef Antoine, usually reserved with his emotions, discreetly wiped away a tear. "Madame, you've turned this place into more than a restaurant. C'est une famille, une école de vie." Samantha's transformation from victim to mentor and inspiring leader did not go unnoticed by the outside world. Invitations to speak at business schools began pouring in. Students wanted to hear not just about her recovery after Mackenzie's betrayal, but also about her vision for human-centered leadership. At one such lecture, at none other than Harvard Business School, Samantha found an opportunity to reconcile with her past. In the front row, among the attentive faces of students, was a young woman who reminded Samantha of herself 15 years earlier. Determined, talented, but unsure of her place in a world dominated by power games. "Success," Samantha began, her eyes meeting the young woman's, "is not measured by the number of people you can knock down on your way to the top. It's measured by the number of people you can lift up with you." The lecture became a cathartic moment. Students shared their own stories of discrimination and prejudice in the corporate world. Professors questioned traditional teaching practices that perpetuated cycles of toxicity. Samantha's words resonated deeply, not only within the walls of Harvard but far beyond. Her story became more than one of resilience. It became a blueprint for a new era of leadership, one defined by empathy, integrity, and the courage to lift others along the way. 6 months after the initial confrontation at Le Petit Jardin, the restaurant had become a cultural phenomenon in Manhattan. Reservations were booked months in advance, not just for the culinary excellence, but for the unique atmosphere of dignity and respect that pervaded the establishment. One particularly busy evening, Sergio burst into Samantha's office, his usually calm face marked with concern. "Senora, you need to see this." On his tablet screen was a New York Times article confirming what many had suspected. Mackenzie Reynolds was under federal investigation for financial fraud and market manipulation. Ironically, the investigation had begun after a series of anonymous tips detailing questionable practices in his corporate acquisitions. "Reynolds Industries on the brink of collapse," the headline blared in bold letters. The empire Mackenzie had built through predatory tactics was unraveling rapidly. "This wasn't you, was it?" Hayden asked softly, entering the office with 2 glasses of wine. Samantha shook her head. "Not directly, but when we helped Thompson recover his company, certain irregularities naturally came to light." The phone rang, interrupting their conversation. It was Logan, his voice tense. "Mackenzie is here, with lawyers." The air in the office grew heavy with tension. This wasn't the arrogant Mackenzie from 6 months ago, but a cornered man desperate to salvage what he could. "Should we call security?" Sergio asked, his hands balling into fists involuntarily. "No," Samantha replied calmly, standing. "Some conversations need to happen." In the main dining room, Mackenzie sat at a discreet table in the back, flanked by 2 suited men radiating the unmistakable aura of expensive corporate lawyers. His face was gaunt, marked by deep circles under his eyes, and his Armani suit, though still impeccable, seemed to weigh heavily on his shoulders. "Samantha," he began as she approached, his voice stripped of its former arrogance, "we need to talk." "I'm listening," she said, sitting with the same grace she demonstrated while serving tables. "You've won," Mackenzie admitted, running a hand through his now visibly graying hair. "My company is finished. My connections are gone. Even Audrey." He let out a bitter laugh. "Let's just say she found someone with better prospects." One of the lawyers cleared his throat discreetly, sliding a folder across the table. "Mrs. Mitchell, our client is prepared to make a generous offer in exchange for your cooperation on certain matters." Samantha didn't even glance at the folder. "You still don't get it, do you, Mackenzie?" "What?" he asked, frustration beginning to creep into his voice. This was never about revenge. It was never about destroying you or your company. It was about justice, about correcting wrongs, not just mine, but those of everyone you harmed along the way. The restaurant had gradually quieted, patrons sensing they were witnessing something significant. Chef Antoine had emerged from the kitchen, strategically positioning himself nearby, a particularly large chef's knife in hand. "What do you want from me?" Mackenzie asked, his voice cracking slightly. "I want you to understand something fundamental." Samantha leaned forward, her eyes locked on his. "True power doesn't come from how much money you have or how many people you can intimidate. It comes from how many lives you can positively impact." At that moment, Thompson entered the restaurant, followed by a small group of business people, former targets of Mackenzie's predatory tactics. "How timely," Samantha smiled. "Allow me to introduce some people you know." Thompson approached first, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to the growing panic in Mackenzie's eyes. "Reynolds, it's been a while." "What is this?" Mackenzie asked, glancing nervously around. "Some kind of intervention?" "No," Samantha replied. "It's an opportunity for redemption." She gestured, and Logan brought over a new folder, much thicker than the one Mackenzie's lawyers had offered. Inside is a detailed plan to restructure Reynolds Industries, not to destroy it, but to transform it into something that genuinely adds value to society. "You want me to hand over my company?" Mackenzie asked incredulously. "No, I want you to transform it, with our help." Thompson interjected. "The investment fund we created with Samantha doesn't just exist to rescue struggling companies, Mackenzie. It exists to change the way we do business." Mackenzie opened the folder hesitantly, scanning the contents. The plan was thorough, with detailed steps to implement ethical practices, restore trust with stakeholders, and rebuild the company's reputation. It wasn't just a lifeline, it was a blueprint for reinvention. "This isn't about revenge, Mackenzie," Samantha said. "It's about proving that even the most damaged structures can be rebuilt, if there's a commitment to doing what's right." The weight of the moment pressed down on Mackenzie as he looked around the room, at the faces of those he had wronged and those offering him a second chance. For the first time in years, he felt the stirrings of something unfamiliar: hope. Mackenzie's lawyers exchanged worried glances, clearly unprepared for this unexpected turn of events. The plan Samantha presented was more than a business proposal. It was a path to redemption. "Let me get this straight," Mackenzie said slowly, flipping through the pages of the document. "You want to turn Reynolds Industries into some sort of incubator for small businesses?" "Not just that," Thompson explained, pulling up a chair. "We want to use your expertise in acquisitions to identify promising businesses that need support, not predators." The restaurant had transformed into an impromptu boardroom, with Sergio discreetly serving coffee to those at the table. Chef Antoine remained at his strategic post, still holding his knife with an almost comical determination. "And why would I agree to this?" Mackenzie asked, though his tone no longer carried the same arrogance. Samantha leaned forward, her voice low but firm. "Because deep down, Mackenzie, you're tired. Tired of destroying, of manipulating, of constantly looking over your shoulder. This is your chance to build a different legacy." Her words hit Mackenzie like a punch to the gut. For the first time in his career, someone wasn't offering him defeat or victory, but transformation. "The federal investigators," he began hesitantly. "We've spoken to them," Thompson interjected. "If you fully cooperate and implement the proposed changes, they're willing to consider a settlement." At that moment, Maria approached with a special bottle of wine, the same Chateau Lafite Rothschild Mackenzie had ordered on that fateful night 6 months ago. "To celebrate new beginnings," she said softly, pouring the wine into glasses with the precision of a certified sommelier. Hayden, who had been silently observing the entire exchange, finally spoke. "You know, Mackenzie, when I met Samantha, she could have chosen the path of vengeance. She had every right to, but she chose something bigger." The sound of the piano playing softly in the background underscored the gravity of the moment. Regular patrons of Le Petit Jardin, many of whom knew Samantha's story, watched with barely concealed interest. "How can I trust you?" Mackenzie asked, his voice betraying a vulnerability he had never shown before. "The same way we're choosing to trust you," Samantha replied simply. "With the appropriate checks and balances, of course," she added with a faint smile. One of Mackenzie's lawyers, after quickly scanning the document, leaned over to whisper something in his ear. Mackenzie nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving Samantha's. "Why?" he finally asked. "After everything I did, why give me this chance?" "Because," Samantha said, raising her glass of wine, "someone gave me a chance when I needed it most, and transformation is a two-way street." The silence that followed was broken by the sound of Sergio accidentally dropping an empty tray. His emotions at witnessing the moment had affected his usual impeccable coordination. "Sorry," he murmured, blushing deeply. The small incident broke the tension, eliciting smiles around the table. Even Mackenzie let out a faint smile, possibly his first genuine one in months. "And what if I fail?" he asked, his voice carrying a trace of real fear. "Then you'll have failed trying to do the right thing for the first time," Thompson replied with surprising gentleness. In that decisive moment, Le Petit Jardin bore witness to something extraordinary, the visible transformation of a man. Mackenzie Reynolds, who had built his life on pillars of intimidation and power, was being offered something money couldn't buy, a genuine second chance. "Before you decide," Samantha said, pulling one last document from her folder, "there's one more thing you need to see." It was a list, dozens of names, companies, and lives that had been affected by Mackenzie's predatory actions over the years, but beside each name was a detailed plan for restitution and recovery. "This is the real work," she explained. "It's not just about transforming your company, Mackenzie. It's about making amends for the past, one name at a time." Mackenzie's eyes scanned the list, recognizing each name, each story. Memories of ruthless deals and lives ruined in the name of profit began to weigh on him in a way they never had before. "How long?" he finally asked, his voice hoarse. "The transformation process. At least 2 years," Thompson replied. "Redemption? That's entirely up to you." With slightly trembling hands, Mackenzie reached for his Mont Blanc pen, the same pen he had used to sign countless destructive deals. This time, however, it would serve a different purpose. "Gentlemen," he said to his lawyers, "I don't think I'll need your services any further tonight." As the lawyers departed, visibly displeased, Chef Antoine finally lowered his knife, allowing himself a small smile of satisfaction. Mackenzie's signature on the document wasn't just a legal act, it was a declaration of surrender to the inevitable, the realization that true strength comes not from power over others, but from the power to transform and be transformed. "Welcome to the right side of history," Samantha said softly, raising her glass in a silent toast. Le Petit Jardin, a silent witness to countless stories over the years, had just experienced its most remarkable transformation yet. It wasn't merely the tale of vengeance turned to redemption, but a testament to the power of compassion over retaliation. A year after the dramatic transformation at Le Petit Jardin, the restaurant had become more than an elite dining establishment. It was a symbol of change in Manhattan's corporate culture. The story of Samantha and her revolutionary management approach had sparked a wave of transformations across the industry. On a particularly busy morning, Sergio was leading the restaurant's new training program. Now the director of professional development, he had turned his own story of overcoming adversity into a model for others. "Remember," he instructed a group of new employees, "at Le Petit Jardin, every role is a leadership position. Every interaction is an opportunity to make a difference in someone's life." Maria, now the head sommelier, moved between tables with newfound confidence. Her 3 daughters had received full scholarships through the new education fund established by Samantha and Hayden. "Mama," her eldest daughter had recently said, "when I grow up, I want to be like Senora Samantha." The comment had brought Maria to tears. "Mi amor," she replied, "be yourself. That's the greatest lesson Samantha has taught us." Chef Antoine, still reigning supreme in his kitchen, had expanded his team to include an apprenticeship program for youth from underserved communities. His once fiery temper had softened considerably, though he still brandished his favorite knife occasionally to make a point. "La cuisine," he often declared, "is a democracy. Here, only talent and dedication matter." Logan, in his expanded role as general manager, had implemented innovative management systems that were now being studied by business schools. The Le Petit Jardin model, as it was being called, demonstrated how excellence and humanity could coexist seamlessly. As for Mackenzie Reynolds, his transformation had been nothing short of remarkable. Reynolds Industries, under its new direction and philosophy, was becoming a shining example of ethical business practices. The process had not been easy. There was resistance, skepticism, and countless hurdles. "Some days are harder than others," he admitted during one of his regular progress meetings at the restaurant. "Old habits die hard." But the results were undeniable. The company had become an incubator for emerging businesses, focusing especially on entrepreneurs from traditionally marginalized communities. The investment fund created with Thompson was changing lives, one business at a time. Audrey, on the other hand, had disappeared entirely from Manhattan's social scene. Rumors suggested she was trying to rebuild her life in Los Angeles, possibly writing a memoir, though no one seemed particularly interested in her perspective of the story. One evening, during a special celebration at Le Petit Jardin, Samantha quietly observed her small empire of kindness with a sense of quiet satisfaction. The restaurant was bustling, as always, but there was something different in the air, a sense of shared purpose and genuine community. "Penny for your thoughts," Hayden whispered, approaching with 2 glasses of champagne. "I was just thinking about how unpredictable life is," she replied, accepting the glass. "6 years ago, when you offered me that first job as a waitress, I was completely broken, not just financially, but spiritually. And now look at you," he smiled proudly. "A force of nature." The sound of laughter caught her attention. In the kitchen, Chef Antoine was teaching a group of young apprentices the secrets of his famous hollandaise sauce. Through the swinging doors, they could see Sergio demonstrating the art of serving wine to new employees, his confidence and expertise evident in every movement. Thompson, now a regular visitor, was seated at his usual table, discussing the details of his latest revitalization project with Mackenzie. The transformation in the former magnate was evident. His eyes no longer carried a predatory gleam, but reflected something deeper, more human. "You know," Samantha remarked, watching the scene, "sometimes I wonder if all of this isn't too good to be true," Hayden finished, well acquainted with his wife's occasional fears. "Yes," she admitted, "like at any moment I could wake up and discover it was all a dream." Hayden took her hand gently. "If it is, it's the kind of dream worth building over and over again." The clinking of glasses, the hum of conversation, and the sound of laughter created a symphony of hope and renewal. Le Petit Jardin wasn't just a restaurant. It had become a testament to the power of resilience, compassion, and the belief that transformation, no matter how improbable, was always possible. At that moment, Logan approached with a peculiar expression. "Samantha, you need to see this." On his tablet, a notification from the New York Times gleamed with a surprising headline: Le Petit Jardin, named Restaurant of the Year, a story of social transformation. The article wasn't just about the restaurant's culinary excellence, but about how it had become a catalyst for social change in Manhattan. It highlighted the professional development program, the social inclusion initiatives, and the broader impact on the business community. "Look at that," Hayden smiled. "Seems it's not a dream after all." The restaurant was brimming with stories of transformation. Maria had recently received an offer to teach at the sommelier school where she had graduated. Sergio was developing a mentorship program for young immigrants interested in careers in hospitality. Chef Antoine had finally agreed to write a cookbook, with all proceeds going to the restaurant's education fund. Even Samantha's harshest critics had come around to acknowledge her success. The Mitchell method, as some were calling her management approach, was being studied in business schools as a prime example of transformational leadership. "You've created something extraordinary here," Thompson said, joining her along with Mackenzie, "something that goes far beyond food or business." Mackenzie nodded, a gesture heavy with the weight of his own journey of transformation. "You taught me that true leadership isn't about power, it's about purpose." The sound of glasses clinking drew everyone's attention. Logan had stepped onto a small, makeshift podium, microphone in hand. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice carrying an unusual emotion, "tonight isn't just another evening at Le Petit Jardin. Tonight, we mark a year since our real story began to unfold." The patrons, many of whom were regulars familiar with the restaurant's history, broke into enthusiastic applause. Samantha felt tears welling up as she looked at her employees, no, her family, gathered in celebration. "But," Logan continued with a mysterious smile, "there's one more surprise tonight." Hayden gently squeezed Samantha's hand, his eyes gleaming with a secret on the verge of being revealed. What was about to happen would once again change the course of their lives in ways no one could have anticipated. "Ladies and gentlemen," Logan continued, his voice echoing through the now silent dining room, "it is with great pride that I announce that Le Petit Jardin is about to embark on its greatest adventure yet." Hayden rose from his seat, joining Logan on the podium. "For years, this restaurant has been more than just a dining establishment. It has been a beacon of hope and transformation. Today, we are expanding that vision in a way no one could have anticipated." Samantha watched, intrigued, as her husband gestured for several people to step forward. To her surprise, they were familiar faces from her past at Harvard, former professors and mentors who had believed in her from the very beginning. "The Le Petit Jardin Institute of Culinary Arts and Business Leadership," Hayden announced with dramatic flair, unveiling a presentation on the restaurant's screen. "The first institution in the world to combine high-level culinary education with principles of ethical leadership and human-centered management." The project was bold, transforming the building adjacent to the restaurant into a revolutionary educational institution. Students would learn not only culinary techniques from Chef Antoine and service skills from Sergio, but also ethical business management from Samantha and Thompson. "And the best part," Maria added, stepping forward with tears in her eyes, "is that 70% of the spots will be reserved for students from underserved communities with full scholarships." Mackenzie, who had remained silent until now, stood. "Reynolds Industries is proud to announce that it will be the primary sponsor of the scholarship program." The announcement was met with a wave of emotional applause. Sergio embraced Maria, both openly crying. Chef Antoine raised his signature knife in a gesture of victory, his face flushed with emotion. "But there's more," Hayden continued, smiling at his wife. "Samantha, my dear, you're not just creating a school, you're creating a movement." The screen shifted to show images of cities around the world: Paris, Tokyo, Sao Paulo, London. In each city, a Le Petit Jardin Institute was being planned, tailored to the local culture, but grounded in the same fundamental principles of dignity, excellence, and social transformation. "Because sometimes," Samantha said, finally finding her voice as she stepped up to the podium, "the universe has a peculiar sense of humor. It takes our greatest defeats and turns them into our greatest opportunities to make a difference." Looking around at the faces surrounding her, Hayden, her steadfast partner, Sergio, a symbol of perseverance, Maria, an example of dedication, Chef Antoine, a master of transformation, Logan, the guardian of her vision, and even Mackenzie, living proof that change is possible. Samantha felt a deep sense of fulfillment. Le Petit Jardin was never just about food or service, she concluded. It was about believing that every person deserves the chance to write their own story of redemption, and now we will help others write theirs. The sound of clinking glasses filled the air, but above it rose an even sweeter sound, the sound of dreams taking shape, hopes being renewed and lives being transformed. Because sometimes the best stories aren't those that end with revenge or defeat, but those that keep evolving, touching more lives, creating more possibilities. And in the heart of Manhattan, in a restaurant that had become so much more than that, a new story was just beginning. In a world where revenge often seems like the easiest path, Samantha chose to transform her pain into purpose and her defeat into an opportunity to uplift others. This brings us to a profound question. When faced with betrayal or injustice, what is more powerful, seeking revenge on those who wronged us, or turning that experience into something that positively impacts the lives of others? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let's create a meaningful discussion about the power of resilience and personal transformation. And if you missed our last story, here's a quick glimpse. A millionaire invited his ex-girlfriend to his wedding, aiming to flaunt his wealth and humiliate her. But his confidence turned to shock when she arrived with a boy who looked exactly like him. Confused and unsettled, he couldn't stop wondering, who was that child? To find out what happens next, click the video on your screen now and dive into this impactful story full of twists. See you there.